All right, good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, March 20th, 9 a.m. I will call this meeting of the Board of Harbor Commissioners for the Town of LaPointe to order. With us this morning, we have Jay Wiltz. Present. Susan Widmar.
Here.
Michael Collins.
Here.
Evan Erickson.
Here.
Myself. And Glenn Carlson.
Here.
Public present, we have Paul Brummer, Max Imholt, Robin Russell, and John Carlson. And via Zoom, we have Cal Linehan, and staff present, we have Lauren Berteau and Katie Kisner. Let's jump into public comment. Robin, you're first.
We were able to count up some numbers of people traveling to school. February, the 8 days of February, that school was in session. There were 14 one-way trips with students had no cards. In the same 8 days of February, there were 48 round trip staff. That included large teachers, clubs, and maintenance. In March so far, there's 13 school days. It seems to be increasing. There's 65 with no card one ways. And we didn't count staff.
Yeah.
So there are definitely individuals that would be in a deficit. And it makes a lot more work for the ticket seller because they have to make individual figure that out.
It's a public comment. You read what it says online. Public comment hearings are designed to allow the public to inform the governing body about their views, matters within the board's jurisdiction. These hearings are not meant for back and forth discussion. Debates with the board members, the public, input the board decisions, its decision-making process. So it's not for you to be asking public comment. I would ask the board to please put the 5 o'clock back on the ferry. I'm wondering if anybody on the harbor commission needs the 5 o'clock or would they like to use vacation time to make up the hours that they lose at work? And I'm wondering if at some point in time in the near future, the harbor commission can have an evening meeting for the public to come and ask questions and for the harbor commission to inform the public how things are going. It's been a year. And how's the news going?
Go ahead, Paul.
Just looking forward to having a meeting by 4:30, 5, and 4:35 too.
We had a couple of public comments that came in through the town website.
Yeah, too.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I think we're looking at maybe a 5 Monday through Friday next week.
Great.
We haven't sent out the text yet.
That's great.
And then the 6:45 would then go back to 7.
I don't know what, because we're still going through this.
Public comment that came in through the town website. Shift the ferry to serve the community instead of just maximizing profit. I would buy a passenger ferry like there's a web link here. Cheaper to run and run passengers early and later for workers and people able to enjoy the island, later dinners and nightlife. And the next one is to the Harbor Commission, please read aloud. Please consider a regularly scheduled boat leaving Bayfield Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. I can't figure out why we previously had a 5 p.m. and now we don't, and the schedule doesn't change until April 25th. Please remember that there are some people who live on Madeline who work full-time jobs on the mainland, as such jobs on Madeline are few and far between. Thank you for your time and consideration with this issue.
I'd like to make a public comment. I'd like to thank the Miffle crew and staff for a tough breakout season and making their way through some very tough ice sheets that float their way through the lake, and then also the good work of getting the Island Queen back up and running so that we're able to have 2 boats again.
Indeed.
Here.
Here, here.
There's no further public comment. We can move on to the minutes of the March 6th meeting.
I move that we approve the minutes of Thursday.
I'll second.
There's no discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have Chief Administrative Officer's report.
So I have the current balances of the Harbor Commission bank accounts. This is as of Tuesday, the 18th. The Miffle utility checking account is at $192,520.25. Our March revenue as of the 18th is at just over 40,000, which is just over 52% of the budget, considering we weren't running for a better portion of the beginning of March. I did have a meeting on Tuesday with kind of a financial meeting with Rick Geisen from Bremer. And we discussed things from like the 2025 budget that we had developed to also just their monthly reports that I've been sending him. We did also discuss the transfers that we should be making for the revenue bond loan payment that's due December 1st. That is a total of the 452,000 that you see here. He said that obviously, ideally, the Harbor Commission would be making equal monthly payment or transfers to our debt service savings account. But they understand that it would probably be easier for us to put away more into that fund during the summer months. So if we were to be transferring equal monthly payments, it would be just under 38,000 per month to do that, which if we wanted to do January through March, it would be just over 113,000, which quite frankly, I don't think that we have that sum to transfer to that with the bills and everything this month.
To get caught up with what we owe from January.
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily what we owe, it's just, we are supposed to
If
be
we broke it
making,
up.
yeah, we are supposed to be transferring a total of the 452,000 throughout the year. If we wanted to transfer to catch up and then continue to do the monthly payments, it would be that 37,000. Or we can decide to transfer just a specific amount and then transfer more during the summertime. Just have to be a little bit very, very mindful of how much we're transferring and making sure that a good chunk of that does get transferred by the end of the summer.
Do we need to have a different policy than the one, or practice, I should say, than the one we're doing now?
Well, we have not transferred anything for that specific payment yet, but it's in writing. There's not like a specific amount that we're supposed to be transferring to like follow all the guidelines and everything.
Are they okay with us making just a couple payments a year or after the summer season?
Mhm,
Okay.
yeah.
Good.
And I would just propose that, we try to do some catch up if we can.
Mhm.
And that we take a look at this after we determine how much the town is able to lend us on a short-term line of credit between now and July.
Which brings me to our other reserve fund account that we have. Well, a good thing about transferring those funds earlier rather than later is we are receiving interest on what is in that account.
Yeah.
Our other account that we have, our reserve fund, it only requires to have the 525,000 in it, and we're at 545,000. Granted, we are receiving, I believe, a little more interest in that account, but we don't need, that's another 20,000 that doesn't technically have to be in that account. I didn't know if maybe we would want to transfer the 20,000 into the debt service so that it's still receiving interest.
Why
Or
are
if
they
we wanna
different? Why did they get
I would have
different
to-
interest?
Um,
Interest rate is different on those two accounts.
I would have to check it. It might have just been the amount that was originally in those. It just seemed like
Okay.
that one. I'll have to double check
Okay.
with, well. Yes,
I mean,
I'll check with.
Assume that Yeah, they should. be.
Regardless, they're both receiving interest.
Well, I would say, my suggestion on that would be that we should
Yeah.
transfer that extra 20,000 into the one that we're not supposed to be, that we're,
Yeah.
not yet contributing to. At least it's something.
It's a good start.
Yep. The payment.
Okay. Okay, and then the money is still where it's receiving interest, but we've technically started transferring funds for that revenue bond payment. Next, but overall, that meeting with Rick went very well. And there are a few things that he wants me to send him, but overall, I feel like it was very good, clear communication. And him and I are on the same page.
Yeah, and he and I actually spoke yesterday on a Zoom call, mostly talking about town stuff, because we are asking them for a loan to cover some town capital expenditures. And also wanted to fill him in that we are applying to the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands for an $800,000 loan so that we can finance the dock project. And he was fine with that. He understands that it's basically at the most, probably a 3 or 4 month loan that's going to be outstanding. So anyhow, we had a good discussion. He thought you two had a good discussion as well. So
Great.
thanks.
On my report, so I do have it's the Wisconsin Water Carriers Annual Report that goes to the Railroad Commission. I do have that finalized, which Robin has checked over that as well and agrees with the numbers that are on there. It will just need to be signed and notarized by, I'm assuming, Zach, if you could do before you leave today.
Mhm.
So there's a copy of that in there.
I have a question. But when they're asking for the names of the several directors of the respondent, shouldn't that be the commissioners' names?
So that was the one area that we were a little unsure of. We understood that to the top part. I confirmed with Sasha, I believe is her name, that actually sent this form out. If you would prefer to have the Harbor,
I just think,
yeah,
it's just inaccurate right now.
okay, so do we want each?
I think the 6 commissioners and probably, you should maybe be on there as general manager or something, or up on the top is, one of the staff people.
Chief Administrative Officer.
Yeah, you could write instead of general manager, chief administrative officer.
Okay, I can make that adjustment for Zach signs that today.
With that, I would be looking for a motion to.
Oh, we got one last.
Well, are we referring to a motion to approve the?
Yeah.
I didn't know if we needed a motion or not. It's included in it.
It's not an agenda item.
But what about,
Oh, good point.
how about the commission to shift 20 grand over? Shouldn't that be part of approving her?
A motion to move to
Yeah.
20,000.
Yeah, maybe that needs a.
Yes. Want to make that one?
We could do it as approval of bills.
Oh, it's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda.
It's not on the
But
agenda.
it's part of her report.
Well, for future
Well, we're just
agenda.
approving that a report goes on file, not
Yeah.
minutes. We're not taking any.
Okay.
Can I step in and just say that we could have it as an agenda item to transfer that money next week or the next time you guys meet?
Yep.
And then the last item on my report was it was a transportation request that Robin had forwarded to me. Just would like to maybe develop a better system that we can use to respond to these requests, because I believe we're going to receive them all throughout the year. And I didn't know if potentially maybe like I could work with the marketing and communications committee, and we can just kind of develop a general response that both myself and Miffle can use to respond. Yes, Raj.
Oh, I was just gonna say that I responded throughout the year. This is just because it was veterans.
Mhm.
But I responded during the year that the town has purchased us and we no longer can do the VIP passes.
Okay.
And this might be one that we could ask St. John's if they would include this in what they're planning to do.
Well, I was gonna say that Evan and Evan will cover all transportation for the veterans for the Memorial Day. So they can charge it to my account.
We already have an,
Yeah, we already are doing that.
Yeah,
We're doing
this
that,
is not,
continuing, but thank you. We're continuing to do that for others.
Oh, okay, I thought,
Yeah.
because we had like we weren't gonna give any freebies unless it was law enforcement.
I think this does qualify them
well,
for the St. John's. They've already, their council has already said this. So that means a phone call from the way we were thinking of it, the communication would be between you and Nathan.
Yeah, Nathan and I have already talked.
Talked about it. Yeah,
Keeping it low key and.
Yes.
Confidential and.
Right.
All that kind of stuff.
yeah.
I don't know how much this is going to be. I don't know if he's just thinking ahead. We couldn't think of anyone that
Yeah.
we might apply to. But, you
yeah,
know,
the request doesn't really give
Nice
much
over.
specifics.
I don't know, I haven't talked to him, but yeah, if you want to send me a copy of that letter back. It's okay with you. I can talk to Nathan and
That'd be good.
Dan for them.
Yeah. Because as I say, the councilors acted up, set aside.
By the way, Dave is, I believe, also on the tribal council.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to put the chief administrative officer report on file.
I'll second it.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have the review of increased tariff talking points.
Who wrote this?
We did.
Oh, you guys did? Okay. This is just, where would this be posted then? On the website?
No, this will be made available.
Made available too. Right now, we have, group tours. Things that came in last fall, in limbo, waiting for the rates and things like that. And so we were going to use it on that. I'm not sure if Kim or Dan would put it on the website or not. We might modify this a bit to, meet our needs, but, if someone had a issue or a comment, we thought we might print it out on a piece of paper and hand it out. And then, all the comments would go to.
Me,
Think we need any action or anything
That's good.
on
As
this?
long as the changes that Nipple makes, the committee approves.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that.
Well, I don't think we're contracted. We can. Edit what we need to.
Oh, yeah, but this statement is from the Harbor Commission.
Yeah, that's in the Harbor Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah, we also might modify it based on this.
You'll be in touch with us when you do.
Yeah, as long as our name's on it, just send it so we know what you're saying without any. Always brevity being the soul of wit.
Mhm.
Anything further there? Let's move on to number 7 then, marine insurance policy renewal.
So this is the quote from James Robinson that he sent to Robin. This would be effective starting March 28th. It, according to Robin's numbers, and so I did not get a hold of James to discuss the percentage increase. According to Robin's numbers, it is about an 8.6% increase. James did include kind of a little breakdown of where those increases are at on that second page of that.
What's the workboat for vessel? On the first page.
That would be if we had approval.
So are we paying for insurance on a boat we don't have?
There's virtually no increase for that.
Yeah, it says NA for,
value and for stuff, but there's,
Historically, how have rates changed? Is there a pattern? I mean, it's an 8% increase significant. Yeah,
What this says, and what I remember James telling me is that this does not include an additional policy to cover board or town liability for sexual harassment or assault in 2022 or 2023, December 31st. Well, I remember this, December 31st. Back up in the military, there has been less than effective monitoring of sexual assault in all military, Army, Navy, Air Force. And so, because they're self-policing. Okay, well, that's my opinion. They're self-policing, they keep it in the house, they don't take it to the outside police. So Congress was, passed regulation that affecting the Coast Guard and all marine operations, that anything happening on a vessel, it was the responsibility of the captain in charge to document that. And they had 10 days to document it, then they had an additional document and send it to the Coast Guard and related parties. Then 10 days to determine what they were gonna do. It was all specific, and if the master, the person in charge did not do that, there were penalties. And so insurance companies last year, I think, I don't know if James said it in his letter, but on email to me, he said, the underwriters said, you need that insurance. And he said, no, it's a small operation and we got a clean record and things like that, whatever he said. But this year they insist on it. So,
that would explain some of the increase we're talking about.
the majority of the increase is probably the, just the nature of the industry. And we
Yeah.
had one incident last year, which has which already expended a certain amount of money and with the insurance company, you have a reserve, which is like a long tail.
Yeah,
Okay, and there was
Yeah.
almost an equal amount of money.
okay. Yeah, they referenced two prior treatments.
It's not that we might have an incident or two a year, but usually they're dealt with rather quickly. Or, the person is goes to the doctor and everything fine. During COVID, we had another incident, which took several years to resolve, and there was pretty much unavailable in that.
Yeah.
And these agreed values on the vessels are agreed between the owner and the insurance company. I worked very diligent several years ago to document the improvements for work on Allen Queen and Nichigou, so those were a lot lower before.
Thank you.
Robin, when they talk about layup, are they talking about like when they're iced in that
Right.
period of time? Okay.
Yeah. So the LaPointe and the Bayfield and Madeline are iced in and, I don't know why, I should probably check with him, but LaPointe is,
It'll also be laid up, I guess.
it is laid up, but it
Not
could come and go, you know, like if the December is not that great, we can run it through December, but with before climate change, it would definitely be laid up from, say, like, the first January to March. But
For like the Bayfield and Madeline, they're usually laid up by, definitely by December 1st.
right, but this, you don't want to change the contract, so you kind of.
But isn't it less expensive if you do have that extra?
If they're out of service?
Yes,
Not really. They, you know, I mean, we're supposed to tell them every time we take the boat to Fraser, you know, this kind of stuff, so it's like. You want to make sure that policy covers you when you really need it.
Well, maybe it's something to look at next year before we do a renewal. That is gonna make a difference.
Do we, I mean, we can't approve this right now, but I assume that we do need to approve it, or,
We could, I mean, it's on the agenda.
oh, it is the agenda, sorry, I thought it was part of Katie's report.
I'll move that we renew the marine policy with Robinson.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
right?
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, Harbor Assistance Program grant update. Go ahead.
Oh, I just had a comment. I think we should investigate the cost of special harassment. Insurance.
I'm sorry, I was gonna ask that. They're recommending an additional like umbrella policy covering this. It's not in this.
No, it's not in here.
Okay.
And they said because the town now owned the
Yeah.
vessels,
Yeah.
that you had more exposure than we would.
And you said they require this?
They didn't require it, but they said, you know, you're.
There's exposure that wasn't there before. Right.
I guess let's just find out what that would cost.
And I think there's. Yeah. I don't know if we talked about this, Katie, but that we had that. There's an additional policy. It's not, what's kind of a marine policy that Star underwriter. Before, we used to have an umbrella policy with auto owners that went over like. And it would merge with the bumper shoot, the marine and the land policy. It was a $4 million policy, and it would cover our landings and our buildings and auto and all that kind of stuff. When the town bought the ferry line, auto owners had a umbrella policy that ran to December of last year. Okay, but they refused to renew it because they didn't want to be in the marine business anymore. So that made me rather nervous, and so James was able to find a $1 million umbrella, just an interim umbrella from Star, which is a marine carrier. So that policy it's not in here, it was, I think it was like $5,000 or $10,000 or something. And he is going to be working on getting that on the same 328 as this, so that price is not in here. And that is a policy that he and Amy from Horton has talked, and Amy from Horton said the town had no insurance on the dock, on renting out slips, on the landings, on the freight, for the cars parked in Bayfield, no insurance. It's a longshoreman policy. So that is not in here, but he's gonna work on it. We have to have it.
James and Amy have been having great communication with one another as far as making sure that we're not like doubly insured, and there's also no gaps with what we have.
And I think James and Amy intend to talk after
And after this too.
to make sure.
All right, back to the Harbor Assistance Program grant update.
I'm assuming that's on my end here.
Yep.
So where we're at is we've got 2 of the bids currently published. So that means they have to be out for 2 weeks. We're going to get a bunch of sealed envelopes in. We're going to open those sealed envelopes, and then we should have a decision by, I believe it's Friday, the 4th of April, as far as who is building the physical steel ramp. So the steel ramp that sits in the well, and then the engineering company that is going to essentially take what we've designed and, you know, put a engineering stamp on it, right? So they've just got to make sure the rebar is thick enough and the cement's thick enough, and a soil bore sample. So everything is at least moving at the moment. I'd say we're still tentatively on schedule to have all of this done in spring. There's definitely a lot of, you know, pieces that just have to happen in order and can't happen side by side. And then as far as the next step will be, you know, we're going to have the ramp getting built. That can all happen on its own. It doesn't really need much. We're going to have the engineers get started. They're going to develop the plan. And then they're also going to assist in creating the spec to go out to bid for the construction portion. And then as soon as we get that back, which we're planning on putting that out for bid on the about the 21st of April. And then we've got to, you know, have it out for 2 weeks, another week to accept. And then we're hoping to start almost immediately after that. Then we'll do the construction portion, and I'm hoping to have that done by the last week in June. And, you know, before we get into the 4th of July traffic, then the dredging, we're going to push out into fall, so long as there isn't, you know, some immediate need, which I'm not seeing an immediate need at the moment. We'll push the dredging out into fall, and then that'll be kind of the last component of the project. It could happen in summer too, if we needed to. We just have to put out a bid and you know, get proposals in if it became critical at any point. So that's where we're at. I don't know if there's any specific questions. The bid was posted on the town of LaPointe site, I believe, as well as in a few newspapers, and then a few other cities' sites as well.
I'm wondering if the opening of the bids, shouldn't that be done in a public meeting?
I think that that's a good question, Evan. I don't know the answer. I guess we should look into that, but I think that as long as they follow the posting rules and the publishing rules, but I don't know. I mean, it may be that they need to be at the Harbor Commission at least.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if
maybe Lauren could look into that.
Okay.
I already wrote it down to talk to Alex about that. Sorry, I'm not familiar, but I know Alex is usually familiar with that kind of thing. Her or asking the Wisconsin Towns Association.
Yes. So when I read through it, you know, it said it had to be in a public space. So which to that effect, you know, I was planning on doing it in you know, the ferry terminal area, and then just recording it so that if there was ever any contention, you know, that it could be shown. But if that's ultimately, you know, the best use is to do it, you know, at the town of LaPointe, that would be great. I would just ask that we, you know, try to stay on the deadline. As far as the opening date would be incredibly helpful. I don't know, again, I believe I'm authorized to open them. So I don't know if it would need a full Harbor Commission staff, but I'd certainly be willing to come over to the island and do it in that space as well.
Cal, I would just say that it's easy for me to go and post them around town, but it does have to be somewhere where it's open 24/7. So if you're posting them inside the terminal in Bayfield, that wouldn't be open 24/7. And I think there's
Posting? What do you, I'm sorry, I thought we were talking about just the opening of the bids.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, but
That's right.
notice, it's where is notice posted.
yeah, I think you need to post notices about it. No.
Again, I'm just going by what was in the HAP grant packet that we have,
Okay.
and talking with Michael Halstead. So again, if you have more expertise on this, we have just shy of 3 weeks,
Okay.
before the scheduled opening date, to make sure that we're doing that.
Sure. I'll
properly.
talk to Alex and then connect with you about making sure that we're just all in the right steps towards that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, with the understanding, we don't want to have the administrative process produce any unnecessary delays.
Yeah, I think it's just more about the space. So long as, it's getting opened in the proper space, on the right day, and I think we should be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions on that?
I have a question about the dredging. Is
Yeah.
that something that the Army Corps is involved in at all? I know
No.
that the shallow harbor, I mean, I'm maybe speaking like out of expertise, but isn't there something with the shallow draft and the Army Corps that they come and dredge as part of? I know they were surveying last year. I know that the harbor needs to be dredged. So I'm just wondering if that's something that they can be involved in, or
So
for cost purposes.
yeah, so the Army Corps of Engineers is only responsible for certain areas to certain depths. So we are dredging outside of those certain areas, and we're dredging to different depths. So their areas is in La Pointe, and it covers a really big area, but they're not going to come in and get a high spot in the middle. They're not going to show up. And that's what, we're seeing is that there's a few spots in their zone that we're going to remove maybe a small amount of material, but the 90% of where we're dredging is outside of their obligated area. So then that goes on to the, the operator to make sure that it's the city or the town or the operator to make sure that it's an acceptable depth to them. So they do have a region and they are required to do it. But we've already overlaid that on our current dredging plan. And that's what I put it at, is about 10% that we're going into their area. So they may show up this year to do the overall, but most of their area is not of a concern for us.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah. Any other, I guess, questions on the HAP grant?
Have anything? Anyone? Shall we move on then to number 9, consider short-term loan from the town?
We approved that last week.
I don't think we did. We
talked about it.
Talked about it, but I don't think
It
it's
hasn't
on
been
the
put on the
agenda.
agenda.
Oh,
Part of it was that there was no specific amount last week. So if there was a specific amount, it could be approved to up to something maybe. But I don't think, if I look back at the minutes, I don't think that was discussed.
just the 800,000, or was there additional amounts that were needed for the spring startup?
How much are we borrowing from the town?
Well, there's two separate things. One is borrowing to sort of go through the slow period. We have borrowed already on the line of credit with Bremer. I'm gonna suggest that we borrow the rest of the 100,000 that we have available on that. At this point, I don't think we know for certain how much the town feels like it can lend to the Harbor Commission. And actually, we're meeting, I think, tomorrow, a working group of the town board to look at sort of what we think we can afford. I'm guessing it'll be enough. I'm probably thinking in the range of 250 to 300,000, just until July.
This is the bridge.
Yeah,
Hopefully in the next 60 days, our revenue will start really coming up.
yep.
And early spring hopefully means early year of people coming up.
We can hope.
We can pray.
So I'd say, at this point, if we approve the draw of the extra 100,000 right now, we're good probably until our next meeting to approve any amount with the town. I mean, we could do, if we wanted, I think, up to 300,000, if you feel comfortable with that. And that will depend again if the town feels like it has the 300,000 or. Now, I will comment that, based on what Cal has just said in terms of the timing, I think that timing pushes back when we are probably going to end up paying the vendors on the HAP grant, on the work over there. And we are right now in the process of applying for the $800,000 from the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands. And it's quite possible that, we get that money, 2 months before we have to spend any of it, in which case, frankly, we won't need to borrow any money from the town.
Okay.
How much leeway, or not leeway, Miffle has the 700,000 working line of credit, or is it 600?
600.
And then what percentage of that do they use on a monthly basis?
Oh, different things. So we have on deposit at Miffle right now that they are using to pay their regular bills, 600,000.
600, yeah,
Yep.
reduced.
It was 700, but now it's 600. That 600 is still there.
Yeah,
And, frankly, that is one of the reasons why we're not ending up with as much cash as we thought, because, we've had to park $700,000 over with Miffle.
Right, and I think Evan's question is, what is the graph of actual usage against?
yeah, how close do they come to using that full 600,000?
Pretty close.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that's what I was looking at with their bank statements and the different accounts that they have and how they pay for everything. And there really wasn't like ever a significant sum that was just sitting there.
Okay.
Yeah. As far as ours, that line of credit, that's $600,000 line of credit, was intended to always get fully used every year, and then repaid in,
Yeah,
taken out in December, January, February, and then March, and then repaid in July and August.
Okay. So
we're at a standstill with this until the town board decides how much.
Or we
I think
could,
we can make a motion to recommend to the town board up to 300,000 to cover the bridge season and to be repaid as soon as possible.
I would second that motion.
Is there a percentage that you're gonna be paying the town for it?
Let's say to be determined.
Okay,
Market rate or
It'll be,
something.
yeah, market rate, whatever, frankly, it will be whatever rate the town pays on its debt.
thank you.
So is there any further discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, authorized draw on Bremer line of credit.
I move that we authorize an additional $100,000 be drawn on the line of credit and deposited into the utility account.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
I
Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, review of the Miffle management contract.
I'll make a motion that we go into closed session under state statute 19.851E.
I'll second that.
All right, we'll do a roll call for this. Jay Wiltz,
Yes.
Susan Whitmer,
Yes.
Michael Collins,
Yes.
Evan Erickson.
Yes.
I am a yes.